7:02. Are there any adjustments to the agenda this time? All right, then we're on to public comment. Is there any public who would like to comment? Okay, don't see any, so consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, September 17th, 2024.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I just wanted to clarify one thing. I did not make it onto the attendance list
Oh,
because I came late, but I was there, and so, yeah.
well, I mean, we could,
You can make that change.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So I guess all in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
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 Okay. Now, there's another public comment time. Still no public, so board comment. Is there any board comment anybody would like to, any topics anybody would like to bring up?
I don't know if this is the right time to bring it up. Maybe, I guess probably when the principals report. Never mind.
Okay. All right, then celebration of learning, the elementary school at the Tunbridge Fair. We know who's doing that.
Andrew said there's a video. I don't know if she sent that to you. No. She did
Okay.
send it. She did.
Yeah, let me, can I send it to you? What's spelling last name?
Rose.
Okay. Come through.
Could also come back to it later if it would be easier.
White River Valley elementary teachers started brainstorming in the spring about projects they would be able to enter in the Tunbridge Fair in the fall. With a focus on entering exhibits made from crops we could grow ourselves. Each project was a team effort. Classes came together with the help of our teachers and our farm to school coordinator, Francie Slater. These collaborations yielded pumpkin pies, pumpkin artwork, zucchini bread, applesauce, sunflower seed art, dried flower mandalas and flower crafts, flower bouquets, apple tree art, and more. We learned a lot. Some of our harvests didn't go as expected. We learned the value of managing summer care for crops and flexible thinking when watermelons fail to thrive. Throughout, teamwork flourished among all WRVES classrooms. Fifth graders teamed up with pre-K students to make pumpkin art, and students collaborated on each project within classrooms. We are so proud that each elementary classroom submitted an entry in the fair. We even won some ribbons. Students enjoyed seeing all the projects displayed at the fair on their Agricultural Education Day field trip. Students and teachers are already talking about what to plant in the spring, to harvest in the fall, for entry for next year's Tunbridge Fair. Thanks for enjoying the pictures and our celebration of learning.
All right. Well,
That was awesome.
yeah, it's a great little project. Okay, well, I guess we'll move on to the superintendent and chief academic officer report.
Thank you. So my name is Anna Adams. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the SU. I'm here on behalf of Superintendent Canarney, who has taken a much-needed vacation. And you all have you had his report in advance. We'll talk more about the fall academic benchmark data that we've been gathering really since probably the second week of school in different formats across all the levels in the White River Unified District. There's also talk about the work that we're doing, continuing to expand sort of our portrait of a learner and unpacking those traits. There are sort of 6 traits, actually more because some of them are kind of grouped together. And throughout this year, we are using all of the time that we have with teachers and staff in different groups to sort of understand what that looks like already in our classrooms and sort of where it might head. So we have, for last time, all of our staff were together for an SU-wide in-service day. We focused on personal and community responsibility, and each of the groups took some time to talk about what does that look like, you know, in a pre-K classroom, what does that look like in a high school science classroom. Even our nurses talked about, you know, what does it look like when our school nurses interact with students around sort of community and personal responsibility. So we'll take each of the traits and unpack them in that way and continue to get a better understanding of, again, where it's already showing up for students and where we have some areas that we could expand some more, where we could share across schools, where we got things going on. So I think it's going to be an exciting year to continue to understand what that looks like for our students in our schools. We'll talk about the budget later when Tara gets here. And I think the next thing coming up is the coffee and conversation, which superintendent will be doing with our community schools coordinator and Principal Thomas. Where you guys, are you at the Arby's Deli?
Deli,
Awesome.
yeah.
So those have been great. They've been kind of all over the SU at farmers markets, in coffee shops, and things like that. So it's been fun to get a chance to really go to where folks are and not always expect that they're going to come here or, you know, or into the different events in our school. So I think finding a lot of value in getting out into the community to talk to folks and hear what's on their minds and what's going well and what other feedback we could get. So happy to answer any questions, and I know the principals have lots more information in their report as well.
Anybody have any questions?
I do, I have a couple questions.
Okay.
It's super exciting about the school-based clinicians, and I just wondered what the process is for referring kids to that, and if it's equitable, and, you know, more kids need it than probably there's room for, so is there a plan to make sure everyone gets it if they need it?
Do you guys want to talk about how we do it here, the school-based clinician, how they?
Certainly. So Sarah Palmer, our school-based clinician, has, excuse me, met with any number of teams here several times last week, looking at our current caseload and trying to figure out exactly what are the criteria for that entrance. it's a higher level of specialization, a more focused level of intensive support. So I'm not sure how we're going to achieve universal immediately. The things that fall under the universal umbrella tend to be, what are the things she can do for this community? So you think about all the initiatives we have, whether it's feeding people, clothing people, giving access to services. Those are the broader initiatives she's working on. But right now, focusing on also what can I do for these students that meet any number of criteria. You think about the Venn diagram overlap of some of our, the students that have the highest risk or greatest need. So looking at those who have a poor attendance, parental units, caregivers that may have had a really poor experience interacting with a school. School is something done to them. We're trying to change that lens. Students who may or may not already be connected with outside resources, an open client through Clara Martin, for example, or working with medical ad litem through Gifford Medical. So any number of those factors are what helped focus the initial caseload. Where do we need that extra level of support? While she's trying to balance out what can I do for the entire community, and those universal approaches are far more access to resources.
So were you talking about there about the school-based clinicians or the, like we added the, I forget what the position was called.
Did I misunderstand? I was answering regarding homeschool coordinator.
Who does connect with, but.
Yeah, you're talking, I
Ben.
apologize.
Well, that was good to
So I
know,
gave you a
because
lucid
didn't
answer
know
about someone you
that.
didn't ask
I liked all
about.
that information too. That was.
But also a new role.
But in a similar fashion,
Yeah.
our school clinician has taken, again, met with the same groups of people, looking at very similar criteria, open clients through Clara Martin, those who benefit the most from on-campus direct services. She's also a part of our regularly weekly meeting social emotional group to look at student data. So in terms of her universal impact, it's adding to that conversation while looking at an identified group of students who, again, meet any number of criteria. I apologize, back on this tangent.
At the high school, we just have, at South Royalton, we have an elementary clinician now. So that frees up the clinician we had that was pre-K through 5, 9 through 12. So we have her just for high school, which is really exciting. And how people get into her caseload is every Wednesday we meet with our MTSS group, and there's all the counselors are there, and Badana as well, and our SAP counselor, Michaela from the SU is there, Shane and myself. And so we go over needs of children that we see that could use that support. So that's how they get on that list. And unfortunately, the list has been too big, and she hasn't been able to see them, and now this frees her up to see more of our students, which is really helpful.
What percentage of the kids get to be seen? Because I know there's probably more kids who need it than can fit in the schedule. But is it pretty close, or is
Yeah.
the balance?
No, with our new SAP counselor too, she's seeing people as well. So I think we're well supported
Okay,
in that aspect, yeah.
great, thank you.
Can you just quickly describe the difference between the SIP and the school-based clinician?
Yeah, so our SAP counselor is more alcohol, drugs and alcohol, but she also meets with children with any need, so, yeah.
Yeah. Slightly different kind of backgrounds, two different contracted services, one's through mostly through Clara Martin, one through Second Growth. But have seen sort of both that overlap in what they work on. And I have, maybe go back to the universal, I've also seen in some of our schools where those folks are able to also do some professional learning with the rest of the staff. So, right, to do some capacity building of like how, right, since all kids aren't gonna be able to fit into their caseload, what are some things that teachers might gain from their experience to sort of use at that universal level with the classroom. So that, that's a piece of, I think, the professional learning too.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions for Andrea? Okay, then principal report.
So I'll go first in high school. We never go
Okay.
first. It's
No, you
always,
never do.
we're always the last one, so. So as you can see in the report, a couple things that I'd like to talk about. When we talked about the MTSS is last year there were 54 write-ups with 23 office managed referrals, and this year there are 32 with 14 office managed referrals. We are hopeful that this trend will continue and we'll see an increase in classroom engagement. So one of the things last year, at the end of last year, was we had a lot of absent students from class, and kids were skipping, and so we put in procedures for that. Miriam, our school counselor, Edmund, is really supportive in that, and anytime somebody is absent from class, she sends them an email for detention, and it's automatic. So it's been 3 strikes and you get a detention, and then we increase that. And that has helped move kids along and be where they're supposed to be. So that's one thing. We've had just recently we had a 9th grade data meeting at our faculty meeting that Mr. Oakes ran with Michaela, support from Michaela, about students that need extra support. It was nice to have the whole staff there because even though some staff members don't have them, they will have them. So it was a really good data meeting. It was our first for the 9th grade. Next is our second goal, our proficiency-based learning model with attention to literacy, math, and flexible pathways. I just can't say enough about our community-based learning with John Rhodes, who's taking that over. He's set up several students with community-based learning. He was at a Women's Can Do program at VTC the other day with some students. He was at Nolato today for a tour to get students interested in that. And recently there was a student interested in tattooing, and so he contacted Randolph Tattoo Parlor. He is a community member and somebody that's really getting things done. I'm so excited to have him because it's something that is really a flexible pathway for a lot of students, but we haven't really been, the numbers have seemed to decline since Mary Waterman, and I can see those starting to increase now with John at the helm. So it's really exciting. And then below that are some numbers from our independent study programming. You see 12 students are currently engaged in independent study, 3 students working on English independent study, 1 senior building the last English requirement for English. And then we have 2 juniors accessing flexible pathways to become seniors and graduate early. And then our capstone projects are, this is the first year that we started capstone, and I mean, Hannah could probably talk about capstone, but it's just been a buzz around school. All the kids are kind of excited about doing their passion that they're interested in doing, and some people are getting out of certain outings to do a different outing so that they can pursue their capstone as well, which is exciting. It's coming up more and more with kids, and it's really a pretty neat program. So they have class, and they've organized their program. They're looking for mentors now. Can't be a family member, but it's, again, another way to draw community into our school, which I think is great, to know what we're doing. And for the third goal,
Yeah,
we have
so
Hannah.
the third goal is kind of about expanding our community outreach in different ways. And so the first event we had was our homecoming event, which was started with a dance on September 27th, and the following day we had many activities for everyone that came, including soccer games. So for cross country, we had an obstacle course put on by the team, and then bass fishing activities put on by the bass fishing team, and then also golf activities put on by the golf team. And then following those, we had a boys game, and they played Bellows Falls, and they won. And then following that, the girls played Springfield, and unfortunately lost, but it was still a really good game. It went into overtime. And then following the games, we had a bonfire put on by the high school seniors, as well as the Royalton Fire Department, and that's just kind of a fun way for the community to stick around, see the bonfire, everyone together. And we also did have live music this year with Allie T, so that was a really cool opportunity for her to come, and we just got to listen to music, and that was fun. And then another event we had was our outing day, which was recent. There are many different activity opportunities for the outing day, including hiking, mountain biking, rock climbing, paddling, tennis and pickleball, apple picking, corn maze, and movie education. So this is just a really cool opportunity for kids to get outside of the regular school day and do something with their friends while still kind of learning something while doing it. And personally, as Mr. Thomas said, I went on switch to the hiking one so I could use that for my capstone project. And then another thing we had was our open house and concert. So families were able to come in and talk to teachers about the year so far, and they had a barbecue during it. And then following that, there was a high school chorus and band concert, kind of the opener for the year. Huge success, personally. I think it went really well, so that was exciting. And then a sports update. Girls have their last soccer game on the 17th of this month against Randolph at home, which is actually this Thursday, so if you want to come, you should come. And then the boys have their last soccer game this Friday against Leland and Gray at home. I believe it's Friday, yeah. And then golf had their last match in Manchester on the 2nd of October, and cross country has their last meet, the state meet, on October 26th in Thetford. And then bass fishing had their final event on October 5th. And then the last thing to hit on is the Green and Gold Scholars Awards. This is a scholarship that goes to Vermont's top scholars, and it's a full tuition paid for UVM for the 4 years. And so every year UVM presents an award to Vermont's top scholars, full paid tuition scholarship to UVM. This year, Hannah Collins, myself, was the nominee and recipient of this award.
I made her put that in.
Are you planning on going?
It's definitely up there. It's one of the top two I'm looking at. But, yeah.
Kind of hard to turn it down.
I know, it's a great opportunity, really good opportunity. But, yeah.
Thanks.
All set?
Yep.
How do you follow a student? Okay, looking at the middle school and looking at our three different goals, you're going to hear parallels between the work Jeff is talking about and what we're doing here. A lot of reasons for that. A lot of support from central office to align systems that we know work, consistency for both caregivers and students. So in some ways, again, you're going to hear similarities. Our MTSS, our systems of support here, we are looking at data on a routine basis. Specifically looking at our fall benchmark, which we're presenting on tonight, as well as VT CAP, correlating those, looking at the list of students generated, both anecdotally and from other data sets to look at, are these the students identified that need a higher level of support? Looking at all those data sets to inform that next choice. That's the point we're at now. We are also heavily in what is a big lift for any school. We are shifting the middle school to proficiency-based reporting system. So a lot of our professional development time has been working both collaboratively in teams, but also with some outside resources to get to a point where our reporting system is an authentic representation of what we're trying to have students learn, be able to have intelligent conversations about which skills we're specifically identifying. Again, aligning with the work that you see in the elementary school already. Turning to our second goal of looking at proficiency-based learning, in addition to that professional development work, really continuing to expand on what flexible pathways can offer. I think part of that is defining what it's not as much as what it can be, looking as to how to meet really unique individual student needs. A celebration I put in this principal's report is we too have a student that has started a work-based learning experience, working in a real automotive shop with a community member. I don't honestly know if there's another middle school in the state of Vermont that has a 12-year-old working in that kind of environment that is still a part of the generally mainstream general ed classrooms. Looking at the lessons of successes, I've had conversations with John Rhodes, the resource that Jeff has spoken about. A lot of this is about alignment because it's the right thing to do. Some of this is trickle down, learning their lessons and applying them to how we can better our own systems. But also some of this is coming from sustained conversation about the kind of student we're trying to nurture and grow. A lot of that coming from Portrait of a Learner work and conversations with Jeff Thomas, other people like Shane Oakes. What's the readiness level of a student entering into the 9th grade? All of these things are driving that kind of work forward. Alignment, getting very specific about what we're learning, addressing intervention needs. Looking at of all of this, the biggest fun pile is the community outreach. I'm always impressed with the open houses here. We happen to run our middle school open house the same night as an elementary open house on this campus, and this place was packed. I always appreciate that opportunity to know, okay, which caregiver goes with which child, what are they excited about, what do they want to show off. We were able to show off any number of student projects, but also the conversation about how else are we reaching out to the community is fresh and underway. November 1st, I'll be joining Andrew Bowen and Jamie Canarney here in town for our community conversations. The same day, my entire middle school is also going on a field trip to the Chandler Arts Center to see a performance that directly ties to the whole school read. So all of those things are linked together, getting out in the community, inviting them into what learning is going on, inviting them into that conversation, and reaching out to our community resources as to how to supplement that and really connect the reading to a real person and their lived experience. Other ways, it's important to note, spent a lot of time talking last year about building the makerspace, bringing in the bikes, things like that, that were at the tail end of the community schools grant. We're seeing daily students want to use the mountain bikes, and almost every single day we have them out on them during their break. But the relationship that was started with that, the person who sold us the bikes from Rochester is also heavily involved in helping us train our students to repair those, to develop habits of basic maintenance, but also going above and beyond. So any bike we have here that's broken is getting fixed by students. And I think that's when you see it really start to come full circle. It wasn't just a commercial exchange, it was investing in a lifestyle that our students have latched onto. And so we're starting to see some of those relationships come to fruition. Today, we hosted a group from Duke University and East North Carolina University, Eastern Carolina University, forgive me, who are really here interested in what specifically rural schools are doing that are operating under this community schools approach, not just the grant. Those who supported us through that process were also present. They're really looking at this school, Hazen Union, the schools that invested in that community schools approach. They want to know what we've done well, what challenges we faced, what obstacles were in the way, how it's lent a sense of the campus is open as opposed to the mentality many adopted in COVID of a closed world. It's interesting to see the work that so many people have done here get the attention of academics several states away, enough where they'd want to come and visit us. I just thought that was worth noting today.
I had a question
Mm-hmm.
for, here.
Sure.
I really liked the inclusion of that data that Jeff had for the write-ups and the office managed referrals.
Mhm.
Do we have that same data for the middle school and the elementary school? Of course.
We can
is not
access
there.
that. It's been the subject of the last couple of faculty meetings, including one today. Not the data point specifically, but the anecdotal side of it. What are we experiencing? What action steps do we want to implement? We'll be presenting in the very near future. Well, they'll actually see a piece of it tomorrow. I can tell you what the trend is. One of the things we're working through is, on some level, certain infractions, we're calling things out even more. So understanding what that data point means. In other words, we've asked teachers to write up X, Y, and Z, and we're seeing those numbers explode. And we're trying to match that to what we're managing in the office and making sure we're following our procedure. And again, that's the conversation we're having, is how to rectify those 2 points. In terms of specific, I don't have that immediately. I could get that if you'd like that specifically.
Just curious as to, I
Sure.
mean, obviously something's happening in the high school that those write-ups
Mhm.
and referrals have gone down, and just,
Yep.
it's nice seeing that data.
So the question we're asking in the middle school, again, we're seeing certain behaviors that we're calling out with far more regularity. Those numbers are going way up. I'll give you an example very briefly. We've had more opened HHB type investigations. And part of that is a response from what we're calling out, but also there's no vacillation. If we even suspect, we're going to open it up and do it properly. So we've had several unsubstantiated. The only reason I mentioned that particular metric is that's an area where you're going to see a higher number that's reflective of, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, it's really stepping on a particular type of behavior.
And you said H?
Sorry, HHB, that's the broad category of hazing, harassment, bullying.
Okay,
Okay?
thanks.
That's good to
The
have.
specific process. That's a number we typically, well, we have to report out to the state at the end of each school year. It's a number we keep in our student information system. It's one of the metrics they look at the complexity of Vermont schools. It's one of the data points to look at alongside how often law enforcement is involved, how often students are suspended, how often there's a physical aggression. So I mentioned that because if all I did was give you the number without any qualification or discussion as to what that actually looks like, you could be alarmed. We're only 6 weeks in, and we've already had X number of cases. How would you like me to report back on that data? I asked that because there have been times when I've been asked for a data point, I say, I can get that for you. How would you like me to report that back out to the board? Because I think,
Well, we do usually do the social
sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
data.
We tend to,
That's
I think it's scheduled for
January-ish?
January, so
Yep.
you get to see sort of the first half of the year and then again at the end of the year. We hadn't, reported out just the first month universally, but
It would not be a breach, correct me if I'm wrong, it would not be a breach of open meeting law to email you what you just requested. Fair enough?
Yeah,
Okay.
great, thanks.
Yep.
Does anybody have any other questions for the principals?
Could you get me a copy? Same email? I mean, just add me.
Or could we put it on the report for next month?
I just am
At
interested
your
now that we
pleasure.
talked about it. I don't have to, I mean, it's up to you guys.
I can see your point, though, that it's going to look really bad because
Right.
you're focusing on an area of it.
And in fairness, we have to ask a similar question. If we see something that's really low, but we anecdotally, in our lived experience, see it happening, what aren't we calling out? It's driving some necessary, some difficult, awkward conversations in terms of our reflective practice. How are we addressing this? How are we driving towards consistency, transparency with parents, accountability, but also a path forward, so we can talk at length at that if you'd like, but I'll start by getting you the numbers. And if you'd like it included in the board report, I can do a more expanded
Well,
snapshot.
it's all Jeff's fault.
I'm
He's an
sorry I brought that up,
overachiever
yeah.
by Putting it in there, and that's what caught my eye when I was reading it earlier today. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Okay. Now on to Tara.
So we have my
did you want to look at the academic report, or are you guys going?
Oh, are we doing that? Oh, sorry. Yeah. No,
I
let's
think it just got
definitely-
added on to the end of, the second line.
Yes, let's do the academic data report.
Give Tara a little more second to breathe.
Do you want me to start this time? Would you like to?
No, I'll go.
First?
Yeah,
Okay.
so, I mean, so we started our fast bridge testing, our assessments, for kind of the beginning of the school year for baseline. And we'll continue with these throughout the year, winter and spring. So the data that we have currently looks pretty good, but like I said, it's kind of a baseline to see where we are at. And then hopefully they will continue to grow as the year goes on.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm short and sweet.
One of the things I appreciate about this facet of my job is I get to learn as well. Anda has been very supportive in explaining what do these numbers actually mean. I wanted to make sure that how I'm interpreting them is intelligent. I do look at a lot of trends that, while they may fall short of an expected level of progress compared to state percentiles, we are still seeing progress. 8th grade math, for example, looking for that consistent increase. What I would add is our continuous improvement plan had a very specific focus on math, literacy, and attendance, those 3 goals. And after seeing this benchmark data, again, where we're starting from, I'm all the more convinced that we chose challenging but attainable goals. Specifically looking at math, we want half of our students to be proficient or above in math. Not unattainable. We see that trend in other grades. We think we come very close in some. Again, challenging but attainable. What this is driving while we await the next batch of results to compare to is how we look at interventions, how we use those people, where we pull, how we support interventionists having consistent, reliable time with students. So it still drives decisions even as we look at this as a litmus test for the start of the year. In our work and data teams, specifically the teachers were asked to look for trends, to understand what some of the obstacles were and how we dig through data, and to point out some some things worth celebrating in terms of their own practice. 75% of the SU students in the sixth grade are proficient or exceeding on the math VT-CAP assessment. We have a lot of students who are what I'd say are on the cusp, might have come with a score of a 2, but when you dig down into that particular student, they still made significant progress and are on the verge of being considered proficient. We looked at some very specific student celebrations where there's very clear, last year they tested as a 2, this year they tested as a 3. And what we know about those particular students we looked at is, in the best case scenario, they had consistent, reliable intervention, they had TIP plans in place, support plans in place where appropriate. So in the best case scenarios, we saw the best case results. It's an obvious statement, but it supports the work we need to do to make sure that's universal.
So one thing that struck me about looking at the progress data and the VT-CAP data is, we are significantly kind of below expectation on, kind of the middle school grades, it seems, or kind of starts in grade 3, 4. But it is interesting on the VT-CAP data, it seems like the state as a whole fits that criteria. So, like, is the I don't know, is it, are kind of the expectations where, clearly you want to have high expectations,
Mhm.
but if, like, the whole state is kind of failing, like, what do you, could you speak to that a little bit?
I can do that if you want. Yeah. So when we adopted Track My Progress as our kind of, we use it as a screener in the beginning of the year, and then we use it sort of as a benchmark during the rest of the year. We set that that cut score for proficiency at what we understood to be proficiency for the region, which is, I will say, like, we put it at 60th percentile nationally, which is like 20 percentile points above like the national, which would be at around 40. And the conversation was just that, like, we know what our kids need to succeed sort of in this region, maybe higher expectations than throughout the rest of the country. And when that was still in the kind of the era of the former state assessment, the SBAC. So it was somewhat normed off of that, as well as sort of a little bit probably normed off of pre-COVID. So what we've seen nationally, right, is everything has dropped back since COVID and not yet rebounded anywhere. And so I think our expectations within Track My Progress are higher than what the state expectation, or the state averages within the state, what we see from the state summative. The difference between the state average and expectations is still, you sort of have to combine both graphs. So when you look at sort of the graph that has the sort of the scale scores along the left side, 1,750 is this is in the VT-CAP, so like 8 and 9 on my packet. 1,750 is what the proficiency is, and you can see there are places where we're above that, there are places where we might be a little bit below that, and there's also places where the state is below that. And very rarely is the state above its own, like what we have set as proficiency. So I think we still want to keep our eye on sort of what the established proficiency is rather than what the state average is, although it's helpful to see that we're not totally, behind anyone else in the state. In a lot of places we're well above it. But I do think there's just sort of this norming that's going on between how do we continue to recover from COVID, which I think is a bigger conversation and probably has more to do than just COVID. And sort of set expectations that are attainable and encouraging and not entirely discouraging, but keep those expectations high and not just have a new normal that's low and we don't ever think that we're going to recover and get back up. So I think that's where Track My Progress and VT-CAP aren't necessarily going to line up quite yet. We're still hoping that the state's going to have some level of sort of comparability report between the former SBAC and the VT-CAP, and that just seems to have never been created, although it was promised last year. So I don't know if that's something to still wait for to better understand how these line up. But Sorry if that got a little wonky for you all, but that's where we are. I don't think we're going to drop our expectations yet, and we'll just kind of keep working towards them and hope that the rest of the state catches up.
I mean, that sounds great to me, but what is the child in 8th grade that's in the red in both of these? How literate and numerate are these children that are at this bottom end?
Yeah.
Like, if you're in grade 8 and you're reading at a 3rd grade level, we're failing you, a 4th grade, like, we're failing you.
Yes, for sure. And the red doesn't necessarily mean, right, the red could be just, right, a little bit below, right, that's the problem with the kind of the colors. We can react to the colors. I think some of the students that may be showing up a red are far below, and some are somewhat below. And I think that's exactly, right, that's exactly where the attention, right, the attention has to be.
If you took the colors away, 51% in math,
Or
grade
below
8 would still, so the number, the color,
Yeah.
those all, like, I'm scared that we've got kids that aren't reading. That's the 12% math, and say cut 10, 15% off the reading. What are those bottom kids? I mean, do we have children that are being illiterate and innumerate in 8th grade? I mean, is it that much of a crisis?
I don't,
If we're talking, just for sake of easy math in my head, because it's been a long day, let's say that bottom number was 10%.
Okay.
10% of that class is 3.9 kids. That's 4 students who are substantially below. That's not me being dismissive.
No.
Those are 4 ongoing and deep conversations about what supports those students are needing. And I don't mean just, this trips our radar, let's give them a tutor. These are students who quite likely have a long history of receiving supports. Certainly at this, if they're still in that phase, the kinds of conversations we start having, or I'm aware of having in 8th grade, tend to be with 9th grade. What are we gearing them towards? Because we're not going to make that giant leap in 1 year. You pick 3rd grade reading ability, and it's interesting because something I've carried in my brain for the last 25 years is a statement made by a director of a for-profit prison. And I don't mean this to be alarmist, but it is something that drives me. For the longest time in the United States, according to this CEO, the numbers of prison beds are extrapolated, are based on projections of students who cannot read past 3rd grade. It's an alarming thought. You chose something that's actually, again, been in the back of my head. To bring it back off my tangent, those students, I would all but 100% guarantee are on some kind of track where there are deeper levels of supports. The answer to your question is yes, in any school, there is a student who for a lot of reasons struggles and may be innumerate or functionally illiterate. But there are a lot of supports aimed at that person. There are conversations as to what they go on to, where do they find success. I hope that's a general enough answer. It's not something we dismiss.
It's got some
It's the opposite.
personal in my. It used to be that children could, or were made to, or could stay back. And my question is when I see an alarmingly big red section in that math, and red and yellow in 8th grade, like, I personally have a son who I wouldn't have been bothered by staying back in an early grade, rather than go forward. And so my question is, have we moved too many kids along rather than giving themselves, like, because I don't really feel self-conscious about a kid repeating 1st grade, 2nd grade. They stay in the same kind of social circles, it's the same kind of curriculum. Once a kid is at 8th grade, 9th grade, they're really sinking. I mean, they're being pulled under by the course load. And so, I'm sorry if I come off as too cautious, but I'm wondering if we're pushing a few too many kids along, and if we need to reanalyze the policy of looking if kids need to, and I'm not even saying make kids, but if parents agree and it works as part of a plan, but I've actually personally butted up against this several times. So,
I think it's worthy of further discussion. As you point out, it's fairly nuanced and complicated.
Of course.
And some of the research shows, but I don't know where the cutoff is, the research shows that retaining students negatively affects their ability to complete high school, right? There is, you made a distinction of the feeling between sort of a kindergarten or first grade age student potentially getting a second shot at that grade.
Absolutely.
And an older grade, and I don't know, but the
Well, it's
research that
nuanced.
we've been going off of mostly is that there is, when you start to retain students, the chance of them graduating starts to decline pretty significantly.
and I get that, retaining them, but not being able to do math or read
Yes.
also negatively
For sure.
affects your graduation,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth, some further conversations, particularly
All right,
if we've
thank
got
you.
kids popping up earlier too.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take that off into a tangent. Thank you.
No, it's,
I wanted to point out too that especially once the kids get into middle school, there's not as much of an incentive for them to try to do well. I'm not talking about the red kids. The red kids, yeah, I agree with you, Ed, that that's really troubling. But I think that the yellow, blue, green kids maybe they're kind of sick of testing. It was my experience as a teacher. It's really hard to incentivize them to do their best because is it gonna count towards my grade? No. Does college care if I do well on the junior year testing that the state makes us do? Well, no.
You know, it's interesting because we try to set it up so it's like really important. You know, we have snacks out. We talk to the kids
Yeah.
before. Why is this important? Because it's really good for the school. And it's so funny because kids are like, well, if we don't do well on the test, I heard we get extra money for the school. And so there's so many. So we want to make sure we talk about why it's important. And I think that's part of it, right? Is letting kids know that no, but this is really important data that we need so that we can continue to improve, right?
And I think with high school kids, it probably
Yeah.
kind of works.
Yeah.
Middle schoolers.
Yeah, but there's always those kids that you can check and they only spent 2 seconds on each question.
right.
Like, that doesn't work, so
Yeah.
we're going to retake that.
Yeah, with does Track My Progress still let you do that?
Yeah,
I know with
time-wise, yep.
MeWes, we used to do that all the
Yep.
time. A kid took, 18 minutes to do 100 problems. And
Yeah.
I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
You get right back in there.
Yeah.
Just to reflect something you said and something the staff had said when they looked into the data, many were surprised or not surprised that our numbers are very close to the state. They chose to read that as a large number of our students actually did participate. Otherwise, it would have been radically different. In other words, if we had more students who were just advancing the test blindly, we would have seen a much greater disparities that did drive other questions. So which of these students might that be the case with? How much time did they spend? So it's one thing they have come to. I'm not seeking to address this, only acknowledge you raised the question about kind of standardized testing fatigue. Something we're growing more and more wary of, just because the format of so many tests are presented that way. Also, in an era where to solicit student information, they're often surveyed. So there are times where we've had to just back off on a survey or a test, change within the window. I'm only acknowledging, we're asking that same question too. How to get the best result is more than just time on test, it's how you approach it.
I guess one of the questions I would have too, to me, more significant would be, how do they do the next year? Like, if only, let's just say that last year's 8th graders had us, in the math, only 5%, only 12% of the kids showed they were proficient or above. Did the 9th grade math teachers see that also, or do they see kids that are being successful, or even beyond that? What kind of feedback do we get from the kids that have gone on to college? Do they feel like they were well prepared? Does anybody track any of that?
A lot of questions in that.
Yeah.
I won't speak to post-secondary. It's been
No,
a
we
decade
don't have a
since I've worked
survey,
in
but that, it's come up before, so that's something that we should
I love that idea.
like to do.
Survey the college freshmen.
You know,
How
so,
they feel
That's
they
one of the
did.
things I always wanted at Woodstock, was like,
yeah,
okay, you're bragging about the fact that, 78% of the kids are going to college. So do you have any data on?
how many
of them
graduated?
Made it past the first
Yeah.
semester, or?
Yeah. So I know when students come in, we use those assessments to place them, because math is a tricky one, right? You don't want to place them too high, because then they just give up if you place them too low. So that's why we use those assessments all the time to put them in the right math level.
And you did a great job last year by starting
Transition
that
math,
math
I know,
class for
it
those
really,
kids.
I think it saved a lot of these kids, for sure, yeah.
The bottom
Yeah,
performers
transitional
got
math,
saved
yeah,
by
yeah.
the,
They just weren't ready for algebra, so you can't squeeze them in there and think, oh, they'll get it. They won't.
I know in previous reports, you've had the portion that shows the growth for each cohort, and I think that was useful. At least I think it was a cohort thing where looking at, where the 8th grade class was the last time they took the test, and then how much growth there's been since then.
Yep.
And I do think that's very useful, because, when we're looking at 8th grade from this year compared to last year, compared to the previous year, it's all
Different kids,
So
yep.
you kind of have to try and extrapolate it or whatever.
How often are they doing the Track My Progress?
3 times a year.
Okay.
I think that third one,
Get
I think their
that.
third one, yeah, and they, the guidance from Track My Progress is to do that year over year. So the plan would be, when we do the winter benchmark, would be to show them the progress from the previous winter. I find this has actually been a really helpful conversation, but I do think that this report that's just showing the baseline for the fall is probably less interested, like there's less
Yeah.
to talk about. I mean, we kind of know this is where, our teachers are talking about it a lot, like this is where we're
They
starting.
forget a lot over the summer.
Yeah, so, right, there's a lot of things to do there, talking about community, like how to get community buy-in, but I think the conversation in the, after the January testing window, one, we can look at the progress, because I think it will be genuine progress, not just the slide, and see both, what does it look like from kind of fall to winter, as well as what does it look like from winter over winter, and we'll get both of those pieces of information.
My other question was on the high school side of things, like our 12th grade. Looks fantastic.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing we didn't test all the 12th graders. Like this isn't,
N-
high school
you're-
level, we're kind of doing a subset of kids.
Right, it's hard to get all of them, because some are going to vocational school, some are doing, community-based learning, so that is a real difficult time.
I
And
wonder if it would be possible to, and maybe it's not possible, with the tools provided, but, have some indication of what percentage, like
took that,
Oh,
88% are college ready, 12% are not, or, sorry, would be like, 60 are college ready, 12% are not, and
Out
then
of-
30% are not tested or something.
yeah, I can do that.
yeah, we've got the 147 students assessed, but throughout all grades, but right, it definitely goes down. Originally, we just adopted this as for grades 9 and 10, because we felt like we had a gap in that, and then the teachers here decided they'd rather just assess as many students, as they had in their classes, and especially because a lot of our classes are mixed grade levels, so it just made sense to grab more of them. So I find the 11th and 12th to be more bonus data. But it is helpful to, I think, to know what we're talking about, so that we aren't misinterpreting graphs that.
Otherwise, we're doing fantastic.
And
We'll only test 3 and I'll pick them. Boy, look at
Yeah.
that.
The question I have is, besides the fall assessment progress, because I know I'm a teacher and I've given this, and especially in 6th grade, in math, they're tested on things that they're gonna learn throughout the year. So this also isn't a representation of what they know at this point. But do the winter and summer, spring ones match the report cards in general? Have we looked at like proficiency on report cards versus how they're testing to see if it's a match at all? Or if there's big discrepancies in how they're
Sorry.
testing versus
Right.
how they're performing in class?
Are you talking in terms of like correlating the scope and sequence of a year's curriculum to what we expect to see for growth, or when they're tested on certain core concepts? I just want to
I
understand
think
the
I'm
question.
just interested in just the testing scores match what they might get at a marking period. And if the teachers feel like
Right. If
the
we're saying
performance
that
on
they're
track.
proficient in
Yep.
Right.
Or skill, is that showing up in
And at the high school, I think that's true, because like, the reason we started the transitional math was because these kids were, not only did they fail on their assessment, they failed in the classroom. So we were like, okay, this makes sense, we need to do something. And then when we found transitional math, their scores actually went up a little bit on this testing, on the assessment, and then their grades were better in the classroom, so it was kind of, if that's what you're looking
Yeah.
for, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've done that formally. It would be interesting, especially now that we have our middle schools moving into proficiency-based grading. I think that would be more possible to do. But we hadn't yet done it at the elementary. And it would be interesting to see. I think probably the strongest would be at the end of the year, given sort of, that this is agnostic of like a scope and sequence that we have in any given program, but. Guys got my job cut out for me, thanks. That's why I come.
Well, I appreciate that you want to know more about it, how to see the data in ways that make sense, what points you want to correlate it to. I mean, I appreciate that because numbers can be used any number of ways, right?
I guess the other thing I'd be interested in seeing, and this might be a completely separate report or something like that, would be kind of our intervention, kind of a report on our interventions and how they're doing. So, we have all these red numbers, and there's probably some number of kids that are red, like what percentage of them are receiving interventions, and then what the results of those interventions are.
Yeah, I think that's.
So,
I will say just on the first part of that, all the conversations and data teams that I've had in the last month have been included sort of name by name discussion of students that identify as being well below expectations. And I just was at one today where, the teachers are like, that score really surprises me. It doesn't match anything else we've ever seen from them, right? Was it an off day? Or, right, that actually makes sense. And, I picked them up for, the second day of school, we're already seeing progress, or we're not seeing progress, we got to change something. But I feel like here they're a percentage, and in every other conversation, there are kids that I think there's a plan around all of these kids, whether, and so then the next piece of that is is the plan working, and how are we moving those kids forward?
anything else on this topic before we move on? No.
Mine's not nearly as interesting as what I'll talk about. So this is everything that we're working on in the business office during the month of October. Lots of stuff was due today. I still have 2 reports to file by midnight. So it's been very busy. Auditors are coming back next week to complete our single audits for the entities that received over $750,000 in federal dollars. We had a few more this year given the extra grants that came in, so we have a couple additional single audits that need to be completed. And then other than that, it's budget season.
Okay.
Any questions?
All right.
Thank you, Tara.
You're
Thanks, Tara.
welcome.
Talk to you later. All right, policy committee. We have a second reading of policies B5 and C12. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the Title IX policy and both those policies. Right. The employee. Comments on those? Make sure.
And where are these at? These still need to be SU board approved. And when are they doing that?
Probably at the next meeting.
Next meeting?
I think they are going on, if I remember correctly, for approval at the October 20.
Okay.
Next Tuesday.
So we'll be able
Because
to-
it got moved.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Remember, it got moved to the last week, so I
Yeah.
want to say the 29th for some
29th,
reason is
yeah.
sticking in my head, but don't quote me on that.
No, that's
So we
right.
might be
That's
looking
Tuesday.
at it in November?
Yeah.
for-
For adoption.
Rodney, was there anything else from the policy committee recently?
No, it's all, basically still a work in progress. And like you were saying, yeah, this is going from the FU, need to approve first, and then we'll read to the boards. But, no, there's nothing really to report other than what you see.
Okay. The Community Engagement Task Force Committee, we have been starting work on the report that's going to be coming in. And we did a mailer with a community survey, linked to the community survey, which should be hitting everybody's mailboxes. Like, I haven't seen mine yet, but.
I haven't.
it's
I got
supposed
the
to be-
confirmation of the payment today
Okay,
for your mailers. So
All right.
I would assume that that means they are going out tomorrow. Usually that I see it the day before.
okay. So hopefully we'll be getting data back from the community soon, survey soon, and the goal was to have a report for the November board meeting, but that community survey taking longer to get to actually being sent. We'll see if we can meet that. I think that's it from community.
And, yeah, we're not meeting again until
No,
November.
we're meeting on Thursday to look over the report
Okay,
again.
okay.
So we've already surveyed students and staff and families. So we've been using that data to kind of start on the report, and then we'll look at, because the community survey kind of looks at different areas than those sections, so, yeah. All right, so that's that. Okay, unless there's any questions, we'll move on to the student support budget, first draft.
So I'll talk numbers and your administrators can talk specific positions if you have questions. As far as a placeholder for health insurance, I used an 18% increase. That's based on what I've been hearing in the commercial and private industry marketplaces, as well as going off the 16.7% increase that was last year. I will have final rates at the end of the month. So draft 2 will be reflective of what's actually approved by the Green Mountain Care Board, because all of the high rates have to be approved just as all the other rates do as well. So that's the current placeholder. Only major changes really on this draft is you'll see down towards the bottom, we've added in the contracted service for the school-based clinician. And that was, we're slowly starting to see a decline in the federal funding that we're getting, which is, a positive because it means that we have less students that are Medicaid eligible that are receiving services as a result of all the wonderful work that our teachers are doing in our buildings. But it does require us to find other funding mechanisms for those roles so that we don't lose them. So you'll see that that's been added into this draft of your budget. And then the only other change that you'll see here is based on some feedback that we had gotten from boards, that it would be helpful to see what the actual tax rate impact is versus just seeing in the past what the total dollar value difference and the percentage difference was. So the way this is working right now is I used your fiscal year 25 1 cent on the tax rate and just converted that so that if all of this went through and we keep it as is, these changes in your budget would have a 0.0171 cent impact on your overall budget.
Go ahead, Peggy.
Well, I was just curious when I was looking at this earlier, how come we have such a huge decrease in the regular ed paras?
So you gotta remember, budget last year was built on your staff that you had employed in 2023. And this budget is based on staff and benefits that you have employed as of September 2024. So if you hired people that came in lower on the salary schedule, if you had people that weren't on family plans currently, that may have been on family plans last year, that's going to have an impact on what I put into your budget now, because I build your budgets based on current staffing, and then if we add positions out of family plan. But otherwise, this budget is built based on who you have employed now and what their benefit plans are now.
Now, are we understaffed now in paras or are we fully staffed?
We're understaffed. You know, we still have, there's still a position available at the high school that John Rhodes held that we haven't filled yet. So.
But that's
There's
still
no
in the
change,
budget.
right, there's no
Yeah, it's still in
change
the
in
budget,
FTE
right,
here.
right.
So if it's an unfilled position, it's budgeted based on the average salary and a family health plan.
It may be helpful to remind folks how much a family health plan is, because that could swing.
$34,000.
Wow. So 2.5 people coming off a family health plan can be, it's $80,000 you're looking.
So there weren't any FTE changes?
No, there's no FTE changes here.
Other than,
Yeah, just
uh,
the contracted
school-based clinicians,
services,
right.
which are not your FTEs.
right. Okay, does anybody have any comments on, or feedback?
What was the FTE on co-curricular director, that it was 67, and now it's 129? That wasn't an FTE increase?
No.
Okay.
$34,000 for family health plan.
That's it?
Wow.
Well, just, I only ask because it looks like it's exactly double-ish.
Nope.
So,
It's still 1.5.
mhm. This looks pretty much the same.
Okay, so at this portion of the budget's looking at 5.5% increase.
Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, and this is all staff, so it'll, the health insurance and stuff like that will particularly hit these parts of the budget,
We're hoping that 18% is a high projection.
one would hope.
What, last year, when we had, what'd you say, we had
It was
16.7?
it was, the final rate was 16.7% increase.
Were they projecting high last year too? Like, does it usually more often go down than,
Yeah, I think last year I started at 17, so I didn't have a huge drop last year.
okay. Well, we could
I
get
mean,
lucky.
Right, I mean, we have had double-digit increases since 2008.
Yeah, it's crazy. When do we find out more fully that rate?
VHI submits their rates and they're approved by the Green Mountain Care Board usually by the end of October.
Okay.
So your second draft of student support, first draft of your general education will usually be reflective of what the final rates are.
Right, okay. All right, well, guess we'll see the next portion of the budget next time, and so far I don't think we would want to see changes to the amount of support we're providing our students. Okay, thanks, Tara.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're on to final preparations and planning for public forums and information specific to the building project bond vote. So people should be seeing a mailer that went out to all residents in both Bethel and Royalton. That should be hitting mailboxes today, basically. So there's that. We have our informational meeting on is it the 24th?
And the 30th.
Yeah, the 24th here, and then the 30th in Bethel. So we'll need to put together,
Here and in Bethel.
sorry, here and in Royalton. Royalton on the 30th, here on the 24th. One thing I think is going to be really important in those meetings is to make sure that people can see kind of the areas that we're talking about and get specifics about what we're doing. So I'm not exactly sure how we'll accomplish this with a hybrid meeting, but it'd be really nice to be able to go look at the entrance and then look at what we're proposing for this campus, and on the Royalton campus, be able to go walk down to the shop area and walk down to the band area and see what the current facilities are, and then, why we're looking at doing
I
these
set up
projects.
all the equipment and chairs out in the band room that we currently have. So
Yeah.
because it looks big. With
Right, yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One question I did field today from one of your community members was some clarification around the total project and the amount of the bond.
Okay.
So I thought that might be some good feedback.
Yes. No, we have been trying to be as clear as possible and simple as, with that, but
Yep.
we will keep.
They received their ballot and was questioning,
Oh, yeah. If they just look at the ballot, that
Yep.
doesn't make it difficult.
to understand. So
Yeah.
I went over that and highly encourage them to come to the meetings.
Good.
So.
Good.
There still seems to be confusion as to the voting. I've spoken to 2 people today who didn't understand that if they've done their absentee ballot for
Yeah, the mail-in.
the state, then they can't just show up at the polling place and expect to vote on the bond.
No, they can.
I-
So you can't vote again on your, state and federal ballots, but you can do is just your municipal ballot in person.
If you've already voted. Because
Yes.
I was told by 2 of the people that check people in that, no, there's only going to be one checklist, and if you've already been checked off as having voted, they're not.
Yes, if you requested your bond ballot in advance and you submitted it, you can't come back and vote again. You're absolutely
Right.
correct there. But if you don't turn that in, you can bring that with you to the polling place.
Okay, you can
or
bring it, but you still
can-
have to request it ahead of time.
Right, so if you're someone who wasn't sure if they could be here for the actual vote, so you called your town clerk and you requested that your ballot get mailed to you, but then you don't physically mail it in, you can bring that ballot, you can turn it in at the polling place, or you can vote at the polling place. You just can't vote
But
twice.
I think what she's talking about is the federal and state ballots that were mailed to everybody, those have been returned. Can that person then
Yes.
go and vote in person? Yes. And we should
so
double
th-
check and make
I-
sure that
yeah,
they
so I
understand
need
that,
to
'cause-
double check with the people I was speaking to, because I was speaking to 2 of the people that are JPs in Bethel that are the ones that check people in, and they said, no, that if you voted absentee on the federal state ballot, then they will not be checking you in to vote on the bond issue, that you have to also request
Well, now they,
from the town clerk ahead of time.
we definitely need
Yeah.
to make sure that that is
Yeah.
figured out.
I would reach
'cause-
out to the town clerk specifically
Okay.
to ask that question.
Okay.
That's who your source of information should be coming from.
Because what they said to me was, we're not going to have 2 checklists. We have one checklist, if the person has already been checked off that they have voted absentee, then if they show up, we can't check them in because they've already.
Okay, well, we'll have to check
Oh,
with the, we'll have to check with the clerk, because,
Yeah,
I think that they are separate roles, kind of. There's the, like, town and state ballots, which are, not, like, our ballot is completely separate from the town and the state ballots.
yeah.
They're required to be brought to a central location and commingled, so they can't be counted at the same time as the other ballots. That's why we weren't, even if we had gotten it, or done earlier, we still wouldn't have been able to be in with the town, the mailed ballots.
Okay.
Like, that was never an option, apparently.
Huh.
So yeah, they should be separate roles, basically. And I'll double check to make sure that that's the case, that I'll talk to Pam and Carmen, make sure that we're on the same page on that. Peggy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, in my position on the BCA, there should definitely be 2 checklists, one for the school district and then one for the state and federal elections and so on. I do know that the ballots, again, as you said, will be commingled. And my understanding when I was talking with Carmen was she got permission from the state that the school ballots, school votes could be counted the next day so that the town clerk has time to get the state and federal ones done first.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so as far as the presentation and discussion on the 24th and the 30th. We have the presentation that we did at the last meeting that, you know, we can use to kind of update to have the most recent stuff, so I'll do that. And unless, you know, I think I'll plan on presenting unless anybody else wants to do that.
It's all yours.
Yeah, kind of figured.
You did a great job, Andrew.
Thank you, Tara.
You really did.
Okay, I think the more that we can spread the word, the better, so, you know, if you have anybody that you're talking to, make sure to try and get them to look at the website that we have up. So that's another place that you can send people. It's just bit.ly/WRUD bond. So it's not that hard to remember.
I would love to be there for Bethel here for that, because I want to be at all of them, but we have a recruiting night at Chelsea, so I'll
Okay.
be there instead.
Okay,
So, but I'll be at Royalton following week.
okay, good. Does anybody have any other thoughts on how we can spread the word or better educate the public about what the plan is for the bond?
I know at the very least, we're planning on incorporating that into the community newsletter that's going out this Friday, also going on our Facebook page, potentially in our announcements. Those are the three mechanisms we have.
Right.
Putting it out there as well.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm thinking doing some deeper dives into different sections of the, and kind of putting those out on Front Porch Forum and.
I'm not on Front Porch Forum, but I have heard that there's been some pretty negative things on
Okay.
there. So yeah, I think I've been meaning to join so that I could counteract some of it, but a
Okay.
friend has told me that most of what she has seen on there has been negative.
Okay. I'll have to take a look. I haven't seen the Bethel discussion, but there hasn't really been much in the Royalton side.
How many listeners your kids got to the podcast?
Oh, no, I said, geez, building a podcast.
Oh, building a
You're
pod-
not yet
Oh.
producing, but you're not the first person to say, hey, we listen.
I was like, maybe the kids can do it.
Oh, I'm thinking 0 right now. That's how it is. But we hope to grow it.
Okay. Anything else anybody wants to bring up regarding the bond vote and preparations for it? Okay. We don't have any current action for this meeting. Last chance for public comment. I don't see any public, so are there any new hires or resignations?
I interviewed 2 subs today.
That's good.
So, and one was moved from Atlanta, Georgia. He was a certified math teacher.
Nice.
He seems really excited. His wife has a job at Vermont Law School. And then another Vermont law student came in, and I was kind of worried because I thought, oh, it's gonna only be part-time. And he's apparently has some medical thing that he had to take some time off. And so the Vermont Law School said, well, why don't you come back next year? And he doesn't want to move, so he's gonna stay, so.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
So 2 really good candidates. I'm so excited.
Nice.
Yeah.
I thought I read a name in here of a new hire.
Oh, for the elementary, the school-based clinician, welcoming Sandy.
Oh, with their name in it, okay. I
Yeah.
was gonna say I read a name somewhere.
Elementary, yeah. Sandy Senior.
Okay. Well, we don't have any other. So future agenda items, one thing we added for next month was looking at the social emotional sports and intensive programming at the White River Valley Elementary School. There's been some kind of behavioral issues there that at the beginning of the year, and so we're going to be looking kind of at what's kind of an update on that and how things are going there. So that'll be for next month. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, November 19th, at 7 PM at the Royalton campus, other than the 24th and the 30th. We also have those. All right. That is all. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.